Ever found something on your phone that you can't explain? Well, let me tell y'all, that's exactly what happened to me a few nights ago. I live alone, see? Just me and my old tabby cat Jasper in a little two-bedroom house on the outskirts of town. It's quiet, peaceful, and most importantly, private. One morning I woke up as per usual and reached for my phone on the bedside table. You know, to check my messages, see what's happening in the world, that sort of thing. But what I found, well, it chilled me to the bone. There, in my photo gallery, was a picture of me. But not just any picture. It was a picture of me sleeping. Now I know what you're thinking. Maybe I took it myself while I was half asleep or something. But no, this was different. The perspective was all wrong. It was taken from the foot of my bed, looking up at me. And the worst part, I couldn't remember taking it. I couldn't remember anyone being in my house who could have taken it. I live alone, remember? And Jasper, bless his heart, isn't exactly handy with a smartphone. So you can imagine my confusion, my surprise. It was like a bucket of cold water had been thrown over my head. I felt my heart thumping in my chest, my palms getting sweaty. I felt a chill run down my spine, and not the good kind neither. I checked the timestamp. It was from the previous night, a few hours after I'd gone to bed. I tried to think, tried to remember if there was anything strange about that night, anything out of the ordinary. But there wasn't. It was just a normal, quiet night, just like any other. But how could it be? There was this picture right there on my phone, staring back at me. It was me, sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the fact that someone or something was in my room watching me. I was scared, y'all. I mean, how can you sleep knowing something like that? So there I was, scared out of my wits. But I knew I had to figure this out. Fear, like a frenzied beast, had taken a firm hold of me, but I was resolved. I couldn't just sit there and let the terror consume me. I had to do something, anything, to make sense of the chilling image that had appeared on my phone. With a heart pounding like a drum, I began to investigate. My first step was to scour my apartment, every nook and cranny, for any signs of intrusion. The doors were locked, the windows sealed shut, my security system untouched. Everything was as it should be, yet nothing was right at all. Then I turned my attention to the picture, the eerie evidence of an unknown presence. I examined it meticulously, looking for clues or hints of who could have taken it. The room was pitch black, save for the faint glow of moonlight seeping through the blinds. But there was no shadow, no reflection, nothing out of place. It was as if the camera had been held by an invisible hand. The more I looked at it, the more my anxiety grew. It was like staring into an abyss, a void filled with uncertainty and dread. My mind began to race, conjuring up all sorts of horrifying scenarios. Was it a ghost, a stalker, or perhaps something even more sinister? The isolation of living alone, which I had always cherished, now seemed overwhelmingly threatening. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the window sent shivers down my spine. The silence of my apartment was no longer comforting, it was deafening. As I continued to investigate, the desperation began to set in. I was searching for answers in a sea of questions. My fear was no longer just a fluttering in my stomach. It was a roaring beast clawing at my sanity. I felt like I was drowning in my own dread. I was all alone with this mystery, and the fear was eating me alive. For the first time in my life, I truly understood the paralyzing power of fear. And it was far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. That night, sleep was the furthest thing from my mind. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, the eerie quiet of my apartment wrapped itself around me like a cold, damp blanket. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the occasional hum of the refrigerator or the distant hoot of an owl. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind rattling the windows, sent shivers coursing down my spine. The quiet was not comforting. It was a sinister whisper, a chilling reminder of my solitude. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in the stillness of the night. I could feel my mind spiraling into a vortex of fear and paranoia. The shadows seemed to dance and flicker in the dim light, transforming ordinary objects into menacing figures. The coat rack morphed into a looming specter, the houseplant a writhing serpent. My own home, my sanctuary, was slowly turning into a house of horrors. I could hear strange noises too, a soft rustle like the rustling of papers, a faint tapping, like the tap of a finger against a wooden table. Each sound sent waves of terror washing over me, drowning me in a sea of unease. I felt watched. It was a gut feeling, an instinctive reaction that prickled at the base of my neck. The sensation was relentless, an unshakable feeling of being observed, studied, scrutinized. It was like a pair of invisible eyes were trained on me, watching my every move, every breath. I tried to shake off the fear, to convince myself it was all in my head. But the more I tried, the stronger the feeling grew. I felt trapped, cornered in my own home, a prisoner of my own imagination. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the minutes turned into hours. My eyes were heavy, my body exhausted, but sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel the phantom gaze boring into me, a chilling reminder of the picture on my phone. I knew then something was terribly wrong. The next morning, I woke up with a sinking feeling in my gut. There was this gnawing dread that something wasn't right. I reached for my phone, and as I swiped through my gallery, there it was. Another picture of me sleeping. The timestamp? Just a few hours ago. My heart pounded in my chest, a wild drum echoing my fear. I was alone, completely alone, yet there it was, undeniable proof that someone or something was with me in my most vulnerable state. My sanctuary, my home, had been infiltrated by an unseen entity. Panic welled up within me, a tidal wave threatening to drown me in fear. I felt the cold touch of dread seeping into every corner of my being. With shaky hands, I dialed the number that no one ever wants to call. The police. They arrived swiftly, their stern faces a stark contrast to the warm morning light. As I led them through my home, their eyes scanned every nook and cranny, their gloved hands dusting for prints, their voices a low hum of professional jargon. Yet, despite their thorough investigation, they found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no traces of an intruder. It was as if my home had swallowed all evidence of the phantom photographer. Their inability to find anything only heightened my terror. The unseen entity remained unseen. Its presence felt only through the chilling images on my phone. The police suggested it could be a technical glitch, a malfunction of the phone's software. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that. The dread that clung to me, the fear that gripped my heart, it wasn't born out of a glitch. It was something far more chilling. As the police left, I stood in the doorway, watching their car disappear down the street. I was alone once more, the silence of my home a haunting reminder of the unseen presence. The fear that had once been a whisper was now a chilling scream in my mind. I was living in a nightmare, and it seemed there was no way out. Days turned into weeks, and the pictures kept coming. The terror that had once been a nightmarish anomaly had now become my everyday reality. There was an eerie constancy in my fear, a chilling regularity to these nocturnal invasions. Each morning brought the same dread, the same hollow pit in my stomach as I unlocked my phone to find yet another picture of my slumbering form. I did what anyone would do. I moved out of that apartment, hoping that a change of location would put an end to this waking nightmare. But the horror followed me. It was like a shadow, a phantom stalker, invisible and yet always present. The pictures kept coming, each one a silent testament to my nightly vulnerability. Despair washed over me like a tidal wave. I felt exposed, violated. My sanctuary, my home, had become a stage for this unseen tormentor. But in the midst of my fear, I found a spark of determination. I wasn't going to let this terror rule my life. I had to find an explanation, a reason behind these sleep portraits. And so I dove headfirst into my own horror story. I sought help from friends, from experts, even from strangers on the internet. I pored over security footage, consulted with tech gurus, even hired a private investigator. But no matter how much I tried to unravel this mystery, it only seemed to tighten its grip around me. I was trapped in my own horror story, and it didn't look like it was going to end anytime soon. It was like being caught in a spider's web. The more I struggled, the more entangled I became. I'm still living this nightmare, y'all, and I'm hoping one of you can help me wake up. I'm reaching out not as a storyteller, but as a woman in desperate need of answers. So let's hear it. What are your thoughts, your theories? Can anyone out there help me make sense of this unending horror? I'm waiting, hoping, praying for a resolution. But until then, the horror continues. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. Show some love, hit that like button. Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.